quite unbelievable. This government, our government, is worse than the apartheid government.
Late last year, virtually every A-list political figure in the world descended on South Africa for the public memorial of Nelson Mandela. Mandela achieved an extraordinary amount during his turn on earth. There were plenty of epic storylines and moral lessons to be drawn from his life. And yet, this was the news item that made worldwide headlines.
South African sign language interpreter accused of gesturing gibberish during the Nelson Mandela memorial.
I'm suffering from schizophrenia.
Told the Associated Press he saw angels coming into the stadium, that he had violence in his past.
I would see things like chasing me.
We tried to contact the company. We couldn't reach anyone. The owners seemed to have vanished.
The translator fiasco is not an isolated incident. It is the inevitable outgrowth of a deep rot at the heart of the country's government. Studying how the country got to this point provides some important lessons in the perils of political monopoly. First, a quick history lesson. While official racism in South Africa dates back to colonial times, the particularly brutal system of racial segregation known as apartheid was ushered in just after World War II. Nelson Mandela was a key leader in the anti-apartheid struggle. He was convicted on charges of crimes against the state in the 60s and imprisoned for 27 years. There is no celestial camp counselor to step in and make things right. And Mandela's life is a testament to the fact that we can do it on our own. When he assumed the presidency in 1994, he embedded radically inclusive humanism into the foundational legal blueprints of the freshly reborn South Africa.
South African Constitution has probably the most thoroughgoing protection of individual rights of any constitution in the world.
For each, the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves.
Political rights that even exceeds those found in the United States Constitution.
The only country in Africa, for example, in which gay marriage is legal.
Now, at this point, Mandela's party, the African National Congress, has an overwhelming majority in the South African government. In 1999, during the second ever national election since the fall of apartheid, the ANC takes 2/3 of the National Assembly. And the secession of the presidency amounts to an anointment, not an election.
De facto president of South Africa already is Thabo Mbeki.
He's extraordinarily intelligent.
It really is quite obscene that poor countries become net capital exporters to rich countries.
Extremely well educated.
You have to read, you have got to understand, you've got to analyze.
He has a taste for scotch.
So I'm saying there are certain things like this that are fundamental, which I think would be of general application.
In other words, a person very far away from the townships.
Possessing great intelligence often gives people in power the false sense that they can master any issue that comes before them. And in Mbeki's case, that hubris mixed with certain cultural insecurities to inform public policy in the most toxic way imaginable.
Mbeki, a man with no medical training, raising doubts about whether HIV really does cause AIDS.
How does the virus cause a syndrome? It can't.
I think it would be a dereliction of duty to say, well, as far as health policy is concerned, we shall leave that matter to the doctors and the scientists.
The government refuses to supply HIV-positive pregnant women drugs which could save their babies.
That thousands of babies are being sacrificed every year, and you have a president who can be arrogantly dismissive.
Life expectancy in South Africa fell from 63 at the end of apartheid to 51 by the time Mbeki was resigned as president.
South African President Thabo Mbeki has been asked to resign. He interfered in a legal case involving his rival.
Because the ANC effectively runs a political monopoly, the party isn't punished for Mbeki's gross failures, which means the ANC is free to elevate to power a man who's even more reprehensible, a guy who'd previously been removed from office because of fraud charges related to a $5 billion weapons deal.
He's magnificently corrupt.
The government is spending 250 million rand to upgrade his own private residence.
People have made a lot of hullabaloo. Government insisted from the security point of view, they need to participate.
Do the gym, the guest rooms, the visitor center, the 31 new buildings, do these constitute security enhancements?
I think you must respect me.
The leaders who are there are not there to rectify the mistake of the past. They are there to live a gold life.
Cronyism that is present within the ANC is extraordinary.
The ANC is redistributing this wealth amongst their leaders.
Don't have teachers, the teachers are going, government is not even taking any action.
Anti-apartheid struggle icon Dr. Mampela Rampele has said that the education system today is worse than during apartheid.
She's right. I am not afraid to say she is right.
Only 30% of people who take the high school exit exam get a high enough score on it to even hope for admission to the least competitive university.
Unemployment under the ANC had skyrocketed. ANC inherited unemployment rate of about 15%. Today, we are talking about 40%, 4-0.
Gulf between white incomes and black incomes is greater now than it was in 1994.
Ordinary black South Africans do not see room for advancement. If you do not know someone who is in the party elite,
Zuma has said that he's confident that South Africans will continue to vote ANC until Jesus comes.
The ANC, because of its large electoral majority, feels invincible.
People are starting to have quite specific and quite disturbing views.
It's better to go to the old South Africa than the new South Africa.
We have regressed into every racist's dream.
Deep, deep disillusionment with the existing political class.
So put yourself in the position of a poor black South African. You've watched the epic toppling of apartheid and the ascension of the transcendent figure of Nelson Mandela, and with it, the promise of a new era. 20 years later, your material existence hasn't much improved at all. That beautiful promise has gone unfulfilled, and you're staring down a government that's dominated by a political party that is wholly unresponsive to your needs.
People who feel they are voiceless and excluded will riot.
Quite extraordinary backlash now against the South African state. 4 to 5 violent protests every day.
South Africa is an incredibly angry country. People are barricading the streets and burning stuff, and they are pissed off about corruption, about the fact that they're being promised this and it's never happened.
When I see my brothers taking a stone throwing at the policeman, I'm going to help it because they don't help us.
What's happened to the rainbow nation now? That seems to be dissipating right in front of them.
Think about it. Black South Africans are now rioting against the party of Nelson Mandela. And as their frustration grows, they're willing to turn to anyone who might offer them the hope of genuine renewal.
There is a new political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, led by this young firebrand Julius Malema.
Go and cook in the kitchen if you are not for revolution.
People really blew them off as way too far left.
Want nationalization, the expropriation of land without compensation. If you are not prepared to share, then you are your own enemy.
But they're really gaining steam really fast.
You are failing to match my thinking capacity.
Stand on our way, we crush you.
Revolution is about pain.
Where has expropriation of land without compensation worked?
No, it doesn't mean if it doesn't work anywhere, it can't work here.
Throw out reconciliation, let's throw out the constitution, is to fundamentally abandon Mandela's legacy.
Malcolm X spoke about house Negroes. You know, house Negroes are black people who identify with the oppressors, and you speak like a house Negro.
It greatly pains me to think in South Africa that we can't actually learn the lessons of history. What went wrong in the rest of Africa, and how do we avoid that? Neighboring countries have been completely destroyed by bizarre socialistic governments. Mugabe, the dictator of Zimbabwe, the guys provided us the pauperization of his nation with like a massive intended violence and barbarity, and it's like ruined the lives of millions and millions of Zimbabweans to the extent they're not going to recover for decades if ever. Julius Malema is likely to be that way.
And Zimbabweans so far are doing very good.
And if we fall into that future, from wherever in the world I will then find myself, I will always be able to say, South Africans were warned years in advance. And being a free and open society like we are today, it will be harsh but true to say South Africans brought this fate upon themselves, and they ended up with the government they deserved.